always
No,
appreciate
no,
it.
I
I
really
enjoy
appreciate
it.
it.
Always,
This is,
yes.
You could do
it's
a
always
master class
exciting to
on.
be able to share. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was telling Maya, people would uh what benefit from kind of using your slides as a model because they're not cluttered. You have good
Mm.
visuals and you keep things pithy and to the point. I really like, yeah, I like the way you do
Yes.
it. So hats off,
Great
Thank
hats
you.
off.
slides. Yeah. Yeah. And good morning to everybody who is watching us live now on LinkedIn and also YouTube, Facebook,
Come
listening to us in Clubhouse. Yes, if this is your first time with us this year, Happy New Year to everybody and to your loved ones as well. So today, once again, we are very happy to welcome Dr. Joe Hug, who has become an authority, as I wrote on my LinkedIn post, an authority on Japanese startups and also medium-sized, small and medium-sized businesses here in Japan. And well, Dr. Joe does research on these businesses and also startups as well. And there is so much that we can learn from him, as Tim already mentioned. Not only his slides, but the whole information he presents and shares with us about the
Yeah.
companies that have been in business for decades here in Japan and sometimes for centuries as well. So, good morning, Dr. Joe Hug.
Good
Hey,
morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yes, before I give you the screen and also bring the slides that you prepared for us on screen, I would like to say thank you to our first sponsor, that is Kanchu, Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku. You can find them online at kanachu.com and also connect with them via James Howell at james@kanachu.com. They offer bilingual services in the field of real estate. So if you haven't run across James yet on LinkedIn, we do encourage you to look him up and connect with him. And if you have a project there, just reach out to him. So thanks a lot for this. And now, Joe, it's over to you.
Wow, thank you. I'm so excited to be here on a new year.
And yes, still,
2025.
Uh,
We made it.
yeah,
we made it
you know,
through the last
I,
one.
we made it. I'm sure I'm gonna make a mistake and write 2024 somewhere down
Oh
the
yeah,
line on a
everybody does
document.
it. Yeah,
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 it'll
sure.
take weeks.
Yeah.
uh, well, I'll tell you. I don't know what your New Year resolution is, but mine is I'm going to be a new me.
Yoo-hoo! That sounds
That's mine.
wonderful.
A new
Are
me.
you willing? Are you willing to share a little bit about who the new you will be?
Yes,
Your
more
vision.
fluffy, more soft.
You're pretty fluffy and soft. If you get any softer and fluffier, I don't know what I won't be able to grab you, or you know.
Kind of
So
like
we don't want that to
Moti, right?
happen.
Moti.
I think you're just
Right.
right.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, no. All jokes aside, I saw. The characters from the application called Line.
Oh, the
I know
animation.
Line. I don't use it much, but I have it. I have an
Yeah.
account.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I have it too.
Well, one of the characters the female main character is a rabbit, and the main
Right.
male character is a bear. And I saw somebody had created this little drawing of the bear, and it says the new me for 2025. And I thought, oh, that's me.
You're a big lovable bear. Actually, I'll be right back. I got a funny prop. I'll be right back. Hold on.
Okay.
Sure, sure. Ooh, I gotta see this. Maybe the first time we've had a prop.
Yes, indeed. No, but
Yeah.
yes,
So, anyways, my New Year's
Hold on.
resolution is the new me. Oh, let's see what he's got. Oh,
oh,
there you
oh,
go.
that's Totoro. Is
My
that Totoro?
my son Grady, I believe it was Grady, gave these slippers to my wife. These
Oh, they're
Totoro.
slippers.
They're slippers.
Slippers
Yeah, yeah.
in in the
Fluffy,
shape of
fluffy
Totoro.
Yes.
slippers, right? So
Yes,
I thought,
How cute.
you guys would enjoy it since we're talking about
yes,
fluffy characters. So
Why not?
Totoro, warm
yes,
Totoro.
slippers.
indeed.
Have you seen that film? I've not seen
Totoro,
all of it.
yes,
Yeah, it's a classic, but
it's a classic. I love it, and I have watched it a couple of times. But every time I watch it, I noticed a different thing. A different
Oh,
thing actually catches my attention,
oh,
which is
oh,
probably how classics work. Basically, it's not
right.
just a one time affair. You
yeah, and you have
go,
to mature. You have to mature into appreciating them. The older you
yeah,
get, the more you start seeing messages that you didn't see. So
mm-hmm,
makes sense, right?
yeah, yes,
Well,
yeah,
speaking of mature,
There we
yes,
go. Nice segue. We got the segue.
yes.
yes, I thought you were doing that on purpose.
Dumb luck, just bumbled into it. So go for it.
Well, we're talking about mature companies, like Maya introduced these small medium enterprises that
Mhm.
are hidden champions.
Right, yes.
And today I actually bring you a treat because this company has been voted for 7 consecutive years as
Oh,
one of the best companies to work for.
Oh, interesting.
amazing. Can I
Seven
bring the slides
consecutive
now?
years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
And that,
Sure, sure.
yes, because I know that if you allow me to interject here, there is still a
Mm,
lot of talk about some aspects of management that managers do not really listen to their employees. They're
mm.
quite military like, very strict, sometimes even worse than that. So, and I think that even yesterday I saw a post on LinkedIn talking about this, how Japanese managers do not appreciate their teams, their employees. And though I'm sure that there are companies like that, I also believe that there are a lot of people here, managers, that
Mm.
still believe that the best resource they have is their employees. But I don't know. I'm very much looking forward to hear this presentation today. Talking about this company, because yeah, it's a great example of, I believe, the best values for management, not only here in Japan,
Absolutely.
also over outside of Japan as well.
Mm, Yeah, I mean, it's every time I and my students, primarily my students, so I got to give them credit because they do a lot of the prep work, and then they go and interview the CEOs, and then of course they have to write the reports
Right.
afterwards with
Yeah.
all the data they collect. But um, I'm always amazed at the stories of just sheer survival and
Yeah.
love for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
um, I'm not saying that big companies can't do that, but it sure seems to me that it's much easier for a SME,
Mm-hmm.
hidden champion, to be able to focus and make a workplace just a great family kind of atmosphere, and then at the same time deliver value, like you said, Maya.
Yeah.
To the customer.
Yes. I
So
think, yeah,
yeah.
to what you mentioned about big companies and SMEs, probably it's very difficult to move and initiate shifts in a huge organization. It requires much more time. It requires a lot of more effort on behalf of the management, but also on behalf of the employees. I believe the
Yeah.
more employees you have, the more personalities you have to deal with, and not everybody can move like one in huge organizations. But
Yeah. It's like turning a battleship around in the water.
Mm,
yes,
mm,
It's
mm,
not as
mm.
nimble, you know. I just a kind of a side note. Gore-Tex, we're all familiar with that company, right? And
Sure.
it
yes,
was in, I think I read about it. I think it was The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. But
Mm-hmm.
he talked about how they limit their entire each company is reduced in size. I think it was 50 people. And based on statistics, once you grow past 50, it's harder for the human relationships and the bonds to take hold. I guess 50 is like one of those quote magic numbers statistically,
Right.
and so like they would have, when they build their parking lots, they have like 50 cars. And if your parking lot is overflowing, you have too many people. That was kind of and then they kept their teams smaller and they had fewer managers. They were flatter, and they said, "Oh no, these small teams are really good at self-policing themselves. The way they're structured." So, I thought that was interesting that these smaller SMEs also they have that nimbleness, and as you said, you call it love. Maybe passion's another word to describe it for what they do. And then just as a side question, and this is maybe we can handle it later. I was talking to Maya about this, but do you have any idea? And if you don't, we can talk about it later. But what percentage of Japanese companies right now offer lifetime employment? I know it's dwindling, but I
Wow.
haven't seen definitive stats. I've seen 10%. Maya said you saw what, 22%, depending on the
Yeah, I
source. So
actually saw, yes, there was a range, and some people say it is 8.6, other people say it's 20. So I think that it's somewhere in between.
in between, maybe. Yeah, I was just curious if you ever stumble across that stat, Joe. I'd appreciate it. Just I'm curious.
Yeah,
So
I haven't seen any official number, but it sounds about right. With all the companies that I deal with, I about 10 years ago, I started seeing an increase in uh, rehiring of people who had left, or
yes,
across across the same industry, where people would go from one corporation into maybe a competing company. Uh, this was always the case, anyways, with the accounting firms, right? The three big accounting firms,
yeah.
they do that. Everybody knows that, but in other industries it was unusual. But I began to see that around 10 years ago, where there was an increase, and so now it's more prevalent, and so
I
I
heard the
believe the
gaming.
number.
I heard the gaming industry is like that too. People move
Mm,
a lot.
mm,
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. I was in the more mature automotive, so it was a little different.
mm,
Most of them were lifetime employment. Although there was the buffer of all the part-time employees they hire. So
mm, mm,
technically, they don't have to offer it to part-time, right? So
mm.
okay, interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and
Anyway,
of
go ahead.
course,
Sorry, I rudely interrupted you.
no, no,
Go
no, no, and
proceed,
and
my
and
friend.
and to throw my 2 cents into it too, is that even the education industry is the same way. It's just professors are now rarely being hired as tenured, so
Mm.
they move around as well. So
Yes.
this
Yeah.
lifetime employment idea, I think, is going away, certainly.
Yeah, I do too. I know it's been dwindling. And the other thing is, the unspoken thing is, the ladies mostly didn't get it either. They
Mm,
weren't
mm,
offered that
mm,
lifetime employment opportunity.
mm,
So,
mm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like, some people say Japan has lifetime employment. Yeah, it's not even the major percentage of the country now.
No,
So,
not no. Yeah. Well, we hold on to these ideas sometimes.
yeah, 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 for sure.
I remember when I first came to Japan, I was expecting to see samurai and ninjas running around the street. Where's a ninja? Um, but yeah, going back to the original topic here. Yeah, this company that we're going to be talking about today, and again, I apologize to the audience and to everyone who listens live or listens later on, is that for right now we don't have the permission of any of the companies to say their names,
Gotcha.
but
Yeah.
hopefully from 2025, this year, we'll start asking if it's possible, and kind of explain to them that it's good PR, you're right. It's
Yeah.
for them to get an audience and kind of get the message out of what they do. And as I mentioned earlier, this particular company was ranked um, for 7 consecutive years as one of the best places to work. Have you ever seen that award that companies get called a great place to work? No, it's like this
I
little
have not.
award. Now, it's a little award. It's really cool. I believe it's got like a square G, almost like a really cool emblem. And anyways, it's a quite famous award that companies get, and so it is well known. For them to be given this is amazing, and also at the same time, it's ranked number 4 in the world of SMEs.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Number
for
4 in sales, in profit. What's
in
being
I think
measured?
in just in a general category in Japan,
Well
uh,
run or well
well
managed?
run, customer service
Mm-hmm.
delivery, employee satisfaction, etc. Yeah,
Got
and so because of that, because they were ranked number 4, they're getting flooded with all these requests. Is like, how do you do things, and can you come and talk to our staff at our SME and guide us and help us? And this is really, really a beautiful story, because if you could look at this first slide, and I know for listeners they cannot visually see the slides, but if you look at the first slide, it says that this company's CEO was personally transformed after he encountered a coaching session. And then
Great.
because of that, he went back and transformed his company as well. And the slide says his company was dramatically changed from a bottom up style. Now, this is really interesting because last night, actually, I do so many things, but last night I had a conversation with one of the companies that I have an agreement with to do consulting, and we were discussing the case of, and maybe I'm mispronouncing the name here, Ed Catmull from Pixar. Is that the
Mm-hmm.
right
Maybe.
pronunciation? Ed
I
Catmull
guess.
I don't know.
Yes.
I'll take your word
wrote
for it.
yeah, wrote the book called Creativity Inc. Which talks about the transformation of Pixar. And one of the things that they did at Pixar was they created small teams. Um, and they called it the brain trust of how to communicate between each other. And one of the additions of the brain trust was they created this thing called uh, peer pirates.
Okay.
Peer pirates. So what they would do is they would select individuals within a team. They would select one to represent the team's ideas or team's opinions and thoughts, and that one person would then go up directly to the executive level and pitch their ideas, and it worked. But when I was talking to the large SME last night, because it's considered a kind of like a general trading company, like a Sogo Shosha, right? So, talking to them last night, they said it seems to us that it's a great idea. However, um, that company, Pixar, was new and it needed to be very innovative and creative so it was possible. We don't know if we tried it in our company if it would be possible. And I agree. I agree. Pixar at the time was really small, which is what Tim was talking about. Is that these companies are able to pivot very quickly, these SMEs.
Yeah.
But I really think that there's something that they can teach the future of these large corporations of how to be able to shift, because we know Japan has low population
Right.
issue.
Right. Right. It's
And so these large
dwindling. Yeah.
corporations, instead of staying large,
Mm-hmm.
why not function at a medium sized level, as far as employee level, and still be just as effective as when they were with thousands and thousands of employees, right? So I'm really hoping that these kinds of stories give ideas to large corporations as well.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
It also
Um.
still, I believe that for many large corporations, that's probably a good way forward. But at the same time, it involves a lot of restructuring and a lot of critical thinking, which takes time, and
Mm,
assessments, evaluations, and so on. And maybe they do not have the resources.
mm,
I Not all of them have the resources, probably, but at the same time,
Yeah.
not having the resources shouldn't be an excuse for not trying to move forward and become more efficient and probably more profitable, right?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was. A lot of this stuff has hints of it have happened before in the past.
Mm,
So in the 1980s, Omron got really large, and Tateshi wrote a book called The Eternal Venture Spirit, and he called it big business disease for the reasons we were already
Mhm.
talking about. You weren't nimble, and he struggled at first because he didn't really know what to do structurally. But then he relied on his management philosophy, and he called it the theory of provided conditions. And if you wanted a desired result, the leader must provide the conditions that make that result inevitable.
mm,
So
mm,
one of his big problems was his division managers would come to him every quarter. They'd have a meeting, and he'd go through everybody and say, "Oh, how much inventory do you have?" And they would report their inventory numbers, and they were too high. And so he decided to turn them into their own companies, each division, and to
mm,
make each division leader the CEO.
mm.
And he said, basically, he said to them, so from now on, you're in charge. You, the CEO, are going to make all these calls. So if you have too much inventory, I'm not going to the bank anymore to beg for money to support that inventory. Now you're going to have to do it. And it was these policies. He goes, just like magic, the next quarter, all their inventories are down because the one thing, most of them were engineers. He goes, engineers hate more than anything dealing with bankers. So so even Tateshi in the 80s was aware of the big business disease, and his effort to, I don't know how they're doing now, but I think they're doing okay. So there are hints of these ideas in the past, based on what I've read, though.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, and perhaps they forgot their own uh, lessons learned or best
Yeah.
Yeah.
practices because they got a little bit fat and happy.
Yes. It's easy to do that, right? Once you
Yeah, it
get
is.
satisfied and when things are going well, it's easy to forget the hurdles, the hardships, and everything that
Yeah,
happened in
Yeah.
the past.
yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. So, yeah, one of the driving philosophies, and you'll see that on the slide for those who are just simply listening, it says, I want to make this a company that will never go bankrupt. And,
I
and
Yeah.
like that.
I
Yeah.
love that. And really, what that means is we will do anything necessary to keep the legacy of this company, meaning we have to continuously innovate.
Yeah.
And so let's jump into some of the other visual slides, and those who are listening will kind of walk you through it, but you'll see that's what they've done, right? They've continuously
Yes.
innovated throughout the history. Now, here you see a couple of pictures of people making paintbrushes, and that was the beginning of the company. They began by creating paintbrushes. That's how it all started. Now, by the way,
Here. Okay.
these,
Yes.
these are not real people. Okay, so
Okay.
These are AI people.
AI generated. Isn't that
All right.
amazing?
All right.
It is amazing. Yes, they
AI,
look very real.
they
They look
do.
like, yes, any other
Count their
employee here.
fingers. Count their fingers.
Count their
That's the
fingers.
comparison.
Well, fingers are
Yes.
getting much better. I'll tell you that. That's for sure. But yeah, I was quite amazed. Yeah, using this AI generated. So um, let's kick off with the grandfather's legacy. There's no real additional pictures, but I wanted to keep things simple. And the original founder, which was over 60 years ago, um, was the grandfather of this family. And again, as we visit these SMEs, you're going to notice that many of them are family run, family owned, where they're passed on to the generations. Um, the grandfather, unfortunately, died young, at
Mm,
the age of 49,
mm,
Wow.
uh, but had left just enough for the son. In this case, we'll call it the father, because the original founder was the grandfather. So the second generation was the father. The father had to take over when he was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Now imagine,
18. That's,
yeah,
yeah,
imagine
wow.
that.
That's tough. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure.
18. Wow.
It's still, yeah, because at 18, people are still trying to figure out what is happening to them and things,
I
really
was a
simple things
mess
about the
at
world.
18. I was a mess.
I was too. Yeah, I
Wow.
you know, when I saw that, I thought, gosh, how many people would be able to not just take on the the great challenge of running a company, and then will the company employees respect you,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but also put a stop to everything else that you had planned in your mind that you were going to do, um, in your youth. And that's what happened. Was when the father, the second generation, took over, he was a university student, and so
Uh,
you can guess what he had to do, right? He had to quit.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
did. So he quit so that he could take on this challenge, and keep the company going. And if we go to the second slide, oh, there we
Hey,
go.
Joe, I
Are we
was
all
thinking
here?
this might be before we switch slides, maybe Maya
Oh
can
yeah,
jump
yeah.
in
We could do
and
the
do our
halftime.
cover our sponsors.
Yes. Thank you very much for this. Yes. A huge thank you to
Sorry about
our
that,
other.
Joe.
Sorry for this. And a huge thank you to our other sponsor, Houze. That is Houze Inc. You can find them online as well. You can find them on LinkedIn. And if you want to connect with them, you need to reach out to Hannah Urushizawa Howell on LinkedIn, or send her an email. Her email and other contact details are in the description of the video on YouTube. And if you are new to our podcast, let us tell you that Houze offers bilingual services in custom home design, construction, and renovations. They also do commercial building construction, and we do recommend you to reach out to them and talk with them if you have a project in mind, because well, we have worked with them, and we're happy to represent them here. So thank you very much, Joe, once again. Back to you, and to the next slide, I believe.
Yes. And
Yoo-hoo.
again, yeah, thanks for the sponsors to keep this going. It's very helpful. So really appreciate it. And yeah, to continue on. So the father had to take over. When the father took over, as I said, he had to drop out of university, but he knew that he still needed to learn something, right? So uh, he focused on learning the right skills that would help him to continue the company, whether it was the leadership skills, the engineering skills, the marketing skills. And so he did continue to go to night school for his education. So he would work during the day, and then he'd go to university classes at night. And it took him 10 years to finish what he wanted to do in his educational journey. And he
Right.
said it wasn't about earning a degree. That was never his ultimate goal. His goal was to learn the skills necessary to be able to
Right.
be a good leader.
Yes.
Process oriented. Process oriented. And
Yeah,
by
I
the
love that.
way, who is crazy enough to start a company and go to night school? Do I know somebody like that? Do I know somebody in my
I wonder
circle
what her name
who
is.
did that too? Well, I think I do. I can't remember her
Okay.
name. Go ahead.
Okay. Guilty as charged. Guilty and but honestly, I have said this a couple of times before and I'm going to say it again. If I could, I will, I would do it again.
Oh
That's
wow, that's
yes.
great.
I
That's
loved it. I
great.
loved it. Yes.
But you're
That's
doing
great.
it to learn too. You're doing it
Yes,
because you're applying
exactly.
these
Yes.
lessons to starting your own company. So that's
Yes.
similar. Yeah.
It is similar. Yes. Very, very much so.
It's sort of the that train thought of learning the skill and then immediately implementing.
Yes.
Applying it.
Applying it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe
Because
that's what
when
was happening
theory,
here as well.
when theory meets reality, it
Mhm.
never goes well at first. You have to learn to, but it doesn't mean the theory doesn't have value. It just means it's got to be molded to fit the reality. But
Yes.
Right.
I
Right.
digress.
Right.
Yeah.
No, 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 absolutely. Um, and so the father, returning to the second generation, the father, uh, with the skills that he was learning and the education that he was receiving, he began to see new ways of keeping the core of these paintbrushes, but then applying it to other kinds of industries. And so they moved on to cleaning products. So you got your brushes to clean your for example your dishes or your walls or whatnot. These brushes, specialized brushes, but also more heavy duty brushes, for example, to polish metal or to shape different types of alloys,
Mm-hmm.
but still using the brush, the kind of the brush
Yeah.
know-how. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool, I think.
Yes.
And how they did that, the second generation, the CEO, was that he began to see how other SMEs were struggling, and these specialized creators of products. And so he brought them all together and said, how can we work together, not take over their companies or nothing like that, but brought them all together and said, how can we all work and then create these feeder tunnels so that when customers would come in and require a specialized product, that his company would be able to deliver it by quickly connecting to those who manufacture it, those who specialized in it.
Yeah.
Very, very smart, I think, to creating this network. And how he came up with this was through a coaching session that he had gone to that really transformed him. And believe it or not, during that coaching session, the father brought his son with him
Yeah.
and said, I had to take over when I was 18. You're coming to learn with me. Pretty cool. I think,
Yes. It's pretty cool.
the
Who?
father was already preparing the son to learn these important lessons. And so the son um, was learning young. And by the time the father retired, and I'm skipping a little bit, but by the time the father retired, the second generation, the son took over also at a very young age. I think he was about 27, who is now the current
So,
CEO. So,
yeah.
but by 27, he was like well seasoned, you know.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, uh, So that was the transformation. So let's talk about the transformation. That's the next slide.
Okay, let me get there.
And yeah, and we're still at the father right now. We're not at the final
Right.
point yet, but this is the father. At the age of 50, had decided to get some certifications for the products they were making. Went to this coaching session and was transformed by it. Brought his son along, and that's how it all began. And he really believed in also bringing that know-how back to the company, where they would have coaching sessions and help each other and mentorship and all that. So that was, I think that's something that's really difficult in large corporations to do, because you're
Yeah,
just a number. you know?
the sheer
But
numbers.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I've seen a reluctance by the larger companies, certainly in the US, to turn to outside consultants. There was this
mm,
again, automotive industry, so that's my bubble, right?
mm,
It's
mm,
not that they never did it, but many of them thought they didn't want to rely on an outsider because they had this knowledge, cultural knowledge of the company, and they believed that internally that's what was appropriate. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying there was a reluctance to do that. So this, to me, sounds very progressive, based compared to the managers I worked with for 20 years, 30 years, right? So interesting.
yeah,
They
yeah,
thought
yeah,
that in
yeah,
the open.
yeah, absolutely. And I think if we really focus not just on the bottom line, but on how we can inspire our employees the way we have been inspired as the leaders. I'm saying we,
Yeah,
but yeah, the
yeah,
executives,
yeah.
pass that on. It can really have a positive effect on the entire company, and I think it's a great thing.
Nice.
Um, so during this time, when the father, second generation, was transforming the company, there were turbulent times, and we can recall things, for example, like the Lehman shock,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this was during that time where the second generation CEO was not only trying to transform the company, but at the same time struggling with these external challenges that were happening, in the financial world, business in general, um, but also in being more innovative. So he had to think about what other things can I get into and transform and change in this company, so that we can stay alive and not be one of the victims of the financial situation around the world.
Right.
So they began to focus on food industry as well, and other types of industries where their brushes could find use, right? And I thought, wow, how many uses of brushes can you can you discover? You'd be
Yeah.
amazed. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So what they did was they started getting into things like pest control.
Pest.
Yes,
Interesting. How? Yeah.
right, right.
Yes.
When I heard that, I was like, what?
Yes. Why so is my question.
Yeah, I love that. Tim, any ideas there? What do you think?
No idea.
Right,
I'm
me
on the
too.
edge of
I was
my
like,
seat.
pest control. Like I was thinking some sort of chemical spray or something,
Yeah.
right? No. So have you ever been in a laboratory setting or a very clean space? And they usually, what they do is you have to remove all your dust off of you.
Right,
Yes.
So they'll do that sometimes through air filtering or
right,
blowing blowing
right, 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 right.
Yes.
air on you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But you also have to ensure that the floor itself is clean. So to do that, as you open and close doors, it'll have specialized brushes on the bottom,
Right.
Oh.
and that's how they did it. That is these brushes not only would keep out the dust and stuff, but also any sort of little creatures that you don't need in lab settings. So yeah, that's how
So
I thought.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
my Totoro slippers wouldn't be allowed in that clean room.
nah, Totoro would be outside the door. So I thought,
Just
wow.
verifying.
So basically, on the edge of doors. So as you open and close, it has this brush uh, system that keeps things clean. And I thought, wow, that is quite amazing.
Yeah.
Interesting
I would have never
observation.
thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I was not aware of such systems at all. So, and they actually thought that it could be one of their areas of business. That's fascinating.
Isn't it because
This
they
is
didn't
the
they didn't stick to traditional brushes? The thoughts of
yeah,
traditional
yeah.
brushes.
That's innovation, and it's subtle innovation, but it doesn't mean it's any less important than the
Mm-hmm.
grand home run kind of innovation. And it only comes from paying attention to the details. So that's very
Yeah.
Japanese. So interesting.
And also listening to your customers' needs, I
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
believe.
yeah.
Yeah, and they did the same thing with data centers. Look at that. Uh,
Fascinating. Yeah.
inside computer systems, big mechanical items,
Mm-hmm.
where little brushes would be necessary. Um, a lot of innovating. It's just quite amazing the transformation this company went through. Um, you know, on their way to becoming one of the best places to work at. Really.
Right. You
Um,
know,
yeah.
oh no, I just remembered something that, well, in the area where I live, there are quite a lot of printing companies, and many of them closed shop. And of course, the businesses that were related to the printing and those big companies and so on, smaller mom and pop shops and so on. So they closed up. And then there is one company that I noticed has quite an old building. It's far away from here, maybe 15 minutes on foot. But when I take walks, I see that building there. And the building looks like it was built maybe 60 or 70 years ago. Right, you can tell it by the style architecture and the everything there. And then the other day when I was walking in downtown Tokyo, I noticed um, it. Well, there is an area with a lot of very modern, beautiful buildings of the same company. So the same company actually has created a campus, and they have
Mm,
maybe 7 or 8 buildings there, huge ones and so on. And I was curious, how did that happen? Because print is now in decline, or that's what they say. And then I did a
Yeah.
little bit of research, and it turned out that yes, they were in printing, and they did a lot of that in the printing industry and so on. And because of the similarities between printing and semiconductors, they are now in semiconductors.
mm,
Because there are similarities between laying the ink and layering it in print, and and also it's very similar
Substrates.
to,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
to
yeah.
how semiconductors and how those the schemes or chips or whatever are produced. And so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
company has reinvented itself, and now they have a huge campus of buildings. Obviously all of them are business buildings, administration, and not only in downtown Tokyo. And I was thinking when I did that, when I discovered that campus, and I was thinking, oh, probably Dr. Joe would love to,
yes, I
yes,
would.
to do research on that company, even though it's not a small company anymore. Obviously,
And
they're a big one.
That's
It's
so interesting because once again we see a focus by that
Hmm.
company on their process, the
Yeah.
capabilities of their process
Yes.
versus the output of what
Mm-hmm.
they created so far. So they
Right.
saw an application of that technology in their processes that could help them move into a different direction. So that's, again,
Yes.
very interesting, that tendency to focus on the process. Yeah,
Hmm.
Yes.
interesting.
And stay to the core, right? Stay.
Stay to the
Yeah,
core. Yes. Yes.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, uh, yeah. So the father retired. The son took over at 27. Continued on, moved on to the, like I said, to kind of more technical brushes. Because if you know anything, I don't know much about IT, but you will see some equipment sometimes where it overheats, right?
Yes.
And so you need airflow, but you
Yeah.
also need to keep out the dust at the same time.
Oh,
Right, right,
wow.
right, 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 right.
And so they
Yes.
started making these
Gotcha.
micro brushes
How about
that
that?
would allow
Interesting.
air but keep out the dust. Isn't that
Hmm.
amazing? That's just
It is amazing. Yes.
it's
Yeah.
just awesome. And
Oh,
and this all came about during, the discovery of semiconductors, as Tim was talking about. Um, Equipment was getting much better, and then of course the advent of AI, right?
Yes.
And cryptocurrency, because the power generated can really heat up a lot of the equipment really, really fast, and
yeah.
so you need that airflow.
Yes,
And
yes, yes,
that's
yes.
how the sun has kept the company going, is through continuous innovation. Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
And I love it once again because we say continuous innovation. And once again, when people, mostly people who come from the Western Hemisphere, say innovation, I was one of those people. We imagine something that is big, that is radical, right?
Mm,
That comes and breaks, the old frames and molds and everything. And but that's actually not the case in Japan. Most often than not in Japan, innovation is incremental,
mm,
and so it is in the process, and it is also in the way you look at the world around you,
mm.
right? So I think this is an important thing to remember, that here in Japan, we cannot expect really radical innovations and radical changes either.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But I also think that I think some of the larger companies that declined after the 80s and 90s boom, and they're still around, Matsuoka, and all these really big companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a
Yeah.
lot of them lost a lot of their market share, again, because of the iPhone. Yeah, they weren't making as many camcorders and all that other stuff, right? But
Yeah.
under the radar, the Japanese SMEs kept innovating and
Mm-hmm.
focusing on the smaller and being less prominent in the limelight. In other words, not having their company names on the brand. And Ulrike has covered this in a lot of her discussions and her recent books. Um, so I think a lot of people missed what the SMEs are doing here.
Mm,
Is that a
mm.
fair
Mm-hmm.
statement, Joe?
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And I think we mentioned it a couple of times in the past episodes that they don't seek the limelight. Like they don't. That traditionally, that's really what a hidden champion is, right? They
Right,
don't mind
right,
remaining hidden
right. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
for whatever reason. For whatever reason that they have. They're all. I think all the companies we've interviewed had different reasons why.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't want to
Yeah.
be taken over. They wanted to focus on their customers and employees rather than on being famous. Um, they wanted to take their time in what they were doing rather than grow too fast and make the mistakes that others have made. So there's many different reasons for them to wish to remain hidden. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Uh,
There.
okay, so let's this takes us on to the some of the takeaways from the story that I long list of takeaways, but
Yes.
but I'll tell you, I wanted. This is not by the way. This is not all the takeaways, but this is really
Key ones.
the company's part of their philosophy is these takeaways that they share with the general public. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and maybe some of these will sound familiar, and some of these will sound kind of new, right? So succession is very important in SMEs.
Yes.
Which is a challenge if the family doesn't have a child
Mm-hmm.
in the family that can take over. This is some of the companies are facing this, unfortunately. Um, Small, quick successes, very important, right? The family is your best cheerleader. They're the ones that are there to help you and guide you and train you and provide everything for you. So family support is really important. Um, don't focus don't focus on sales, but on
Mm-hmm.
the solutions and value that you bring to your customers, and that's what keeps them
Yes.
going. Oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't sell products. Solve the customer problems, the pain points,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Yep. Yep.
Which, by the way, is very similar to startups.
Yes. And we talked about that in our previous podcast, right? In December. So once
Yeah.
again.
So that's why I see that
Mhm.
there really is this great way of looking at the both worlds and saying, how can we learn from both startups, but also these SMEs that share so many of the same ideas? Yeah. Another one, and you can see here on the list, says, avoid becoming the lonely emperor with no clothes, surrounded by yes men.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
So,
Yeah.
so Joe, give the audience who might not be familiar with that term just a quick rundown of what emperor with no clothes like implies.
Right. So there's, one of those childhood stories that we hear where there was an emperor who wanted to be seen as, almighty and powerful, and was tricked by a person to wear no clothes. And this one person kept telling him, "Oh, you look wonderful. You look great." And the emperor kind of fooled himself also to believing that wearing no clothes was actually the best outfit,
Right.
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 and made him look, ever so royal. Uh, but the people in the town, or the people under his control of this king, were laughing at him.
Yes. Yeah.
They could
Yeah.
see the reality. Oh, he's wearing nothing. What is he talking about? But the king thought he
Yeah.
was wearing something,
Right. Right.
and that's what
So
that's
it
meant
means
by
surrounding
emperor.
yourself with people who just tell you what you want to hear rather than what you need to know.
Right,
Yeah.
Is that
right,
okay?
right,
Yeah. Good.
right. That'll fool
So there you
you into
go.
believing.
Hiroko-san.
Um, yeah. Oh, Hadaka no Osama is that must be
Yeah.
in
Osama.
Japanese. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
that's pretty cool. And then of course the yes men, right? People who simply say yes to everything you say. We should do this. Yes, that sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, some takeaways, and which brings me to the final slide, right?
Yes.
The core philosophy of the company. Employees. Number one, employees. Every employee must thrive materially, spiritually, internally. Provide to them what is necessary to do this. Uh, I'm jumping to number four, but number four is providing these retreats that they call vision camps, and so they go off campus, if you will, away from the company, to be able to go somewhere where there's a safe space where everybody is able to express their opinions and their ideas and what is happening in the company and what they feel could be maybe improved. And it's this equal ground where everybody is able to speak, and there is no ranking of, managers first or employees first or
Right.
nothing like that. Everybody can speak at any time. I think it's quite amazing. The second thing, of course, is individuals. They believe, the CEO believes that we all must take responsibility. We must take responsibility for creating who we are and where we want to go. And I thought that's quite amazing. Who would think a company even cares, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, and number three, which I have seen before, and I'm not sure, I don't think we've talked about this other company that we went to visit. It's a tech company we went to visit. Um, and the only reason I didn't talk about it before this other company is because it's not as old as the traditional hidden champions that we've interviewed. Traditional hidden champion companies we've interviewed are between 50 to 150 years old.
Wow.
This,
Okay.
this tech company is only about 10 years old, so it was quite new, but it was still an interesting company to visit. And that tech company and this company that we're talking about today share the same thing. And both of them created a guidebook. Pretty cool.
Right. Yes.
With the company philosophy and how to transform their employees, right? So in this
Mhm.
case, they created this guidebook of shifting mindset, how to personally and professionally grow.
Mhm.
I think it's quite amazing. And this tech company that we went to visit as well had the same thing. It really small booklet, very small, easy to read. Maybe in about 30, 40 minutes you can read them. But it has the core values of the company that they give to
Mhm.
every single employee that they
Yes.
carry around, and reminds them, what the company stands for. How many big
Right.
Yeah, I
companies
love
do that?
that.
I don't, you know.
Yeah. I mean, some of these are different for me based on my experience in terms of the stronger focus on what everybody's calling now work-life balance. So
Yes.
that was hard work was kind of assumed in a lot of the companies, but there's still the mission was really important, and the values was important, and contributing to society was important, and that always impressed me. And I like how this company is evolving to also acknowledge the importance of this work life balance, because it wasn't assumed when I was in the workforce, when I worked
Right.
with and for Japanese companies. But work was work.
Yeah.
That's so important, right? So it's good
So
to
my
see that.
experience, yes, good to see this. My experience with my previous employer, sorry, is different, but in a sense similar because so every year in the beginning of the year, the top guy, the big cheese, the big potato, if you like to call them that, he would hold a session, yes, on the first day, working day of the year, and he would outline basically what the organization was working for and what the goals were. And those goals, they were never ever numerical goals. They
Mm.
were about connecting people. They were
Vision.
about, yes, mission, and they were about actually bringing peace by connecting people, because I was working in the travel industry, and that's what the travel industry does basically, right? So, and that would happen on the first working day of the year. It would happen also after the golden week, and that time it will not be the top potato, it will be the second in rank. And then it will happen every time a new employee came, and that new employee was introduced to everybody during the chore, which is the morning meeting.
Meeting.
Yes, the company meeting. And so those values, they were reiterated every time there was an occasion. They were not written down except in the New Year's greeting by the chairman. But otherwise, in other ways, they were reiterated every time there was an occasion to do so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
No. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. And I saw less of that in the US with US companies, but it became a fad in the late 80s for everyone to write in their mission statement, our people are our most valuable assets. And then, of course, when things turned sour, they all laid off their most valuable asset. I'm talking about American companies.
Yeah.
So it was all window dressing. So that kind of became all in vogue back then. But I don't know. I think we kind of lost that, never took root. It's more,
Right.
you can't really think about that if you're looking for the bottom line next quarter, right? But if you have a longer term view, I think it leaves room for that kind of thinking long term, because it is beneficial to the company to give to the community. But you got to think, not if you're looking at next quarter, it's not. But if you're looking at 10 years down the road, at least that's how I saw it. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm this was great. We've gone over as we always do, because it's always so interesting. Did you want to tie it up in a neat little bow, and then Maya can take us home with
Absolutely.
our
Yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
some of the the final words of the CEO that we had interviewed was their wish is really to continue to share the lessons that they've learned over time, but also to share their core values. They're focused on employees and focused on their customers. That they would love to continue to share that. Again, they were voted one of the best places to work, and because of that, they've become quite famous within the SME world, and they love sharing. So I thought, yeah, that's great. It's one of the things that I tell people when because I'm a mentor with startups as well, is I tell the startups is once you make it, share and
Yeah,
go back
share.
and help others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, but
So
thank you so
thank you
very
for
much.
letting me share.
Oh no,
No,
this is
thank
great.
you.
As always
As
enjoy it.
always, yes. I just cannot wait for every next episode with you, Joe, because
Yeah.
there is always so much to learn from you and from all the things you share with us, the stories of the companies. And once again, there are some points that are valid for all of them, even though they differ slightly, but the base is more or less the same. And I believe that if we remember those points, probably it will be easier for us as well to work. Maybe not just as business owners or startup founders, but as people who work for other organizations as well. So, and yeah, thank you so very much for this.
Thank you.
And one
And
of the big takeaways for your sessions, Joe, is that you can't paint all Japanese companies with a single brush, just like you can't
No,
paint all the Japanese people with a single brush, or anybody for
right.
that matter. And
Yep.
so I love these stories because it really drives home the point that not all Japanese companies are the same. They're very distinctly different, and
yes,
industries are also dictate some of that as well. So this is great. Such a valuable insight. So thank you again.
Great.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
very much. Yes,
Thank you to our listeners too. Thank you.
Yeah,
yes,
thank
thank
you.
you to
There's
our
no one else.
listeners as well. Yes, and please, yes, to our listeners, please be with us again for the next session with Dr. Joe as well, which is coming down the road. We need to decide the date, but I hope, Joe, that you'll be here. And
Yes.
then, thank you. Then to everybody who stayed with us or will watch this podcast later, all the best for the new year once again. A happy midweek, and well, a great reminder of the week as well. Stay with us, be with us, subscribe for our channels, and once again, before we finish, let me say thank you to our sponsors. They are Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku or Kanchu.com and online, and Houze Inc. To work with them, you need to connect with James Howell at james@kanachu.com, and Hannah, either on LinkedIn or through email, which is hannah@kanachu.com as well. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.